Well, well, well. They never expected the first two experts to fail. They never expected the investigator to step back, rubbing his forehead like he just stared into a puzzle with missing pieces. They never expected the psychologist to cancel the follow-up session because something didn't add up. But after they ran through every professional who spoke in clinical terms and every specialist who relied on logic, they took a darker turn. They went looking for someone whose work didn't rely on facts, someone who could see behind the curtain, someone whose entire livelihood depends on reading the energy most people never acknowledge. And so they brought in him, the psychic known for never turning down a case. A man who had read criminals, politicians, grieving mothers, lost children, and the shadows around people who pretended they had no shadows. He had a reputation for accuracy that made skeptics uncomfortable. He was the final weapon they were saving for when everything else failed, and it had. He didn't even wait to sit down before he said it. Whoever this person is, they're not ordinary. His eyes stayed on the floor, like your name alone pulled the air out of his lungs. He asked for a photo, an object, anything you'd touched, anything that held your imprint. They placed the small item on his table, expecting him to lean forward with confidence, expecting him to begin his practiced routine. But the moment his fingers brushed the surface, he froze. Not a normal pause, not the thoughtful kind of stillness professionals use to build effect. This was impact. Something hit him. Their eyes locked onto him, waiting for some grand revelation. Instead, he pulled his hand away like he'd touched something too hot. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds, and when he did, his voice sounded like someone forcing words through a blocked channel. Why didn't you tell me they were connected to this? They didn't know what this meant. They exchanged confused glances, trying to retain their composure, trying to pretend they were in control of the moment. He wasn't buying it. He leaned back, wiped his palms against his trousers, and exhaled in a way that told them he wasn't scared of you. He was scared of what surrounded you, scared of what had shaped you, scared of what walked with you without ever showing itself to ordinary people. You should have warned me, he whispered, as if the room itself might be listening. He asked them nothing about your personality, your past, your patterns. Those questions didn't matter. He asked just one thing. What did you do to them? And they did what people like them always do. They lied. They softened the truth. They tried to portray themselves as concerned observers instead of architects of chaos. But the psychic shook his head slowly, as if hearing confessions behind their words. No, that's not clean. That's not what I'm feeling. Something here was broken, and not by him. He wasn't supposed to say that. He wasn't supposed to defend you. So they pressured him. They demanded he continue. They insisted he deliver what they paid for. Their desperation was loud, even when their voices were soft. They needed answers they could use. They needed a narrative that placed them in control. They needed confirmation that you were the unstable one, the unpredictable one, the danger in the room, even when you weren't in the room. They needed reasons to justify their obsession with you. That's why they brought him here, to validate their storyline, to give them ammunition. But instead he reached for his tools, and every tool resisted. The pendulum didn't swing the way it normally did. It jerked, stopped, reversed, then hovered still, like something unseen was holding it in midair. He frowned and tried again. Same result. The tarot cards refused to behave. He'd place one down, only to find its imagery shifting in the corner of his eye. Some cards appeared upside down, even though he swore he didn't draw them that way. Some felt heavier in his hands. Some felt cold. He asked them again if they understood what they were asking him to step into. They insisted he proceed, so he pushed deeper into your energy field, even though every instinct told him not to. And then everything in the room shifted. The air thickened. The temperature dropped a few degrees. His breath became shallow. He didn't say anything at first. He sat completely still, staring at the cards, staring past them, as if he was seeing something layered behind reality. And then he said something they will never forget. No human should have this kind of power. The room went silent. That wasn't what they hired him to find. That wasn't what they wanted to hear. He continued anyway, eyes unfocused, voice low, almost reverent. This isn't natural protection. This is old. Older than you can imagine. Someone or something walks with him. And not the way you think. Not like a guardian. More like a witness of everything he's endured. Their faces twisted with confusion, so he clarified. This person has survived things that were not supposed to be survived. Energetically, physically, emotionally, parts of them were destroyed, parts of them were replaced, and now they carry something no practitioner should try to interpret. He placed a hand on the table as if grounding himself. Whatever harmed him, whatever broke him, whatever shattered him, it didn't win. But it didn't leave either. It changed him, and not in a way that any of you understand. They tried to play it off, tried to pretend none of this scared them, but he wasn't looking at them anymore. He was looking at the card he'd just pulled, the one that made every muscle in his face tighten. He stared at it for a long moment before putting it back down, like he didn't want anyone else seeing it. This card shouldn't appear in this position, not for someone still alive. Their confusion turned to uneasy laughter, but his expression stayed dead serious. This card represents someone who has already crossed a line most people don't even approach. Someone who has experienced endings so absolute that the consciousness itself rewired. This person doesn't respond like normal people, doesn't think like normal people, doesn't fracture the way normal people do. You can't break something that already rebuilt itself. He leaned forward, voice sharper. And you didn't tell me about the interference. They froze. What interference? They asked. He shook his head. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the thing that keeps blocking my reading. Every time I try to look deeper, something pushes back. Something that isn't him. Something that feels ancient and protective. Something that doesn't want me here. Their breath hitched. He continued anyway. This is the kind of energy I've only encountered twice in my life, and both times I walked away. I'm not sure I should continue. But they insisted he did. They were too far into their own obsession to back out. They needed answers, even if those answers shook their worldview. So he sighed, rubbed his temples, and reluctantly continued the session. He shifted the cards again, pulled another, hesitated, pulled a third. His expression changed gradually, confusion first, then discomfort, then that specific kind of dread that belongs to someone realizing they've made contact with something far beyond their understanding. This is not the reading of an ordinary person, he muttered. This is someone who has died without dying, someone who has walked out of emotional graves, someone who has stood inside destruction and refused to collapse. He pointed at the card. This person carries the kind of strength that doesn't come from practice or mindset. It comes from surviving something that should have erased them. Then he paused again, eyes narrowing. And what concerns me is that he's not even trying to block my reading. He's not resisting, he's not defending, he's simply there. And yet I can't see him fully. Something is hiding the parts you most want to know. Their frustration boiled over. Hiding? Why would he hide anything? He doesn't even know we're doing this. The psychic gave a humorless smile. You don't understand. He doesn't need to know physically. His energy knows. His subconscious knows. His field knows. Some people have defense mechanisms stronger than conscious awareness. He's one of them. He tapped the table gently. He's been watched before, targeted, misread, tested, and somewhere along the way, something stepped in. Something began guarding him. Something that doesn't let outsiders tamper with him anymore. And then he said the words that made them both shift uncomfortably. He's protected by something ancient. They weren't prepared to hear that. They weren't prepared for the psychic to sound almost respectful when he said it. They weren't prepared for him to look at your energy as if studying the aftermath of a war. He didn't ask for this, he continued. This kind of protection doesn't come from prayer or request. It comes from survival, from being pushed past a point the human psyche is not designed to pass. He drew another card. His hand trembled. This confirms it. They leaned forward. Confirms what? He looked up slowly. You're not dealing with someone you can manipulate. You're not dealing with someone who cracks under pressure. You're dealing with someone who has already lived through the collapse they fear. Someone who rebuilt themselves with no blueprint. Someone who learned to think without relying on external validation. He pressed his fingers to his forehead. This is someone who doesn't break the way normal people break. Because they already shattered once, and when they reformed, they became unreadable. They tried to argue, but the psychic cut them off. You want weakness? You won't find it here. The only weakness he had was the people he trusted, and he doesn't trust you anymore. His eyes met theirs, unblinking. This person was hurt by someone they cared about. That experience rewired them. Their emotional structure is different. Their intuition sharpened. Their boundaries hardened. And now anyone attempting to invade their inner space is met with resistance they can't identify. They swallowed hard. He continued. Even I can't see past it, and I don't think I should try. But they pushed. They begged. They offered more money, more incentive, more pressure. Their obsession was louder than their common sense. They needed answers that justified their behavior. Needed proof they were right to watch you, analyze you, discuss you in rooms you didn't know existed. They needed something that made you wrong and them right. The psychic sighed, defeated. Fine, one more pull. He reached for the deck slowly, like approaching something dangerous. He shuffled once, twice. His fingers hesitated a third time. He drew the card. And when he flipped it, his entire face changed. He didn't speak for 5 long seconds. When he finally did, his voice was almost a whisper. If I continue, I won't sleep tonight. They stared at him, confused and terrified. He looked down at the card again and shook his head. He's already stepped into the next stage. Whatever you think you're doing, stop. He leaned back, expression hollow. You're not investigating a person. You're interfering with a trajectory. They didn't understand. They asked him what that meant. He looked at them quietly. It means the more you try to read him, the more you reveal yourselves. He stood up, gathering his tools with sharp, uneasy movements. I'm done. I shouldn't have touched this, and neither should you. They demanded answers. He ignored them. They asked what he saw. He didn't respond. They followed him to the door. He waved them off, muttering something under his breath like a warning meant to be half heard. But one line slipped out clearly. You're not prepared for what he becomes next. That single sentence didn't just land in the room. It hung there, vibrating, like the air itself wasn't supposed to carry something that heavy. They stood frozen, trying to understand what he meant, trying to convince themselves he was exaggerating, but something in his expression told them he wasn't. His eyes weren't wide with fear. They were tight with caution, not of you, but for them. As if he knew that once the next layer of your energy unlocked, nothing around you would stay in its comfortable shape ever again. They watched him walk down the hallway, refusing to explain anything further, and that alone scared them more than the reading itself. Psychics talk for a living. But this one couldn't bring himself to keep speaking. He didn't run, but his steps quickened like someone trying to put distance between themselves and something that follows without moving. They went back inside, pacing, whispering, almost arguing with each other. They weren't afraid of your power yet. They were afraid of the unknown part of it. That part you don't even fully understand. That part you don't flaunt, don't weaponize, don't display. That part you carry like a calm shadow that responds only when necessary. While they panicked, you stood there the same way you always do, still unbothered, watching their reactions reveal pieces of themselves they've kept hidden from everyone but you. Because your presence has a strange way of peeling people open whether they want it or not. You don't try to expose them, they expose themselves, trying to figure you out. One of them finally said what they were all thinking. Why couldn't he read him? Another shook his head. He did read him. He just couldn't handle it. And that sentence cracked something inside the group. Because now the question wasn't about your energy, it was about the psychic's limits. If a man who dedicated years to studying the unseen couldn't hold what he saw in you, what chance did they have? They looked at you again, but this time their eyes didn't hold judgment. They held caution, respect, something close to awe. And you didn't say a word. You didn't need to. That's when the shift started, subtle, quiet, nearly invisible to the untrained eye. The air around you warmed, not like heat, but like activation, the way metal hums before it bends, the way water shivers before it boils. You didn't force anything outwards, but something around you adjusted as if aligning itself with your awareness. They felt it before they understood it. They stepped back without realizing their feet were moving. People don't know how to react when a person's energy upgrades in real time. It's not something they're used to witnessing. They expect emotional reactions, anger, outbursts, chaos. But your power never expressed itself through anything external. It showed itself through what didn't move. You stood still, and they felt everything shift. The psychic had tried to read you. He had tried to trace your energy like he does with everyone else, but with you, the moment he reached too deep, something reached back, not violently, not defensively, just with a level of authority he wasn't prepared to encounter. He pried like someone picking a lock, unaware that the door he touched didn't open. It watched. And when he realized that your energy wasn't sitting there waiting to be interpreted, but actively observing him, that's when he broke the connection. You didn't block him. You didn't push him out. You simply existed in a way his methods weren't designed to handle. The others didn't know the details, but they felt the aftermath. Something changed in the room, something old, not in the sense of age, but in the sense of depth, ancient in the way oceans feel ancient. Ancient in the way mountains feel ancient. Not a timeline, a presence. The psychic felt it first. That's why his voice cracked when he said no human should have this power. He wasn't saying it to insult you. He was saying it because he couldn't categorize you. He couldn't place you inside any reference he had. His experiences, his training, his insight, all of it collapsed when he touched the edge of what protects you. That's what terrified him, not you, what stands behind you. The group regrouped, trying to breathe normally, trying to regain their sense of control. One of them finally asked, "Did you know you had that?" You tilted your head slightly, not confirming anything, not denying anything. You don't speak about the parts of you people aren't ready to hear. You don't explain what doesn't need explanation. People expect power to be loud. Yours isn't. Yours is the kind that sits quietly until someone touches the wrong boundary. The kind that watches, the kind that decides. They kept asking questions that didn't matter. How long have you had this? Who taught you? Why didn't you tell anyone? What triggered it? They weren't asking because they were curious. They were asking because they were unsettled. They needed something, anything, that would make your strength feel less unpredictable. But that's the thing they don't understand. Your strength never needed permission to exist. It didn't need validation, didn't require a story, didn't come with a manual. All you said was, he shouldn't have tried to go that far. And that one sentence silenced everything around you. They didn't understand what you meant, but they understood enough. Your energy isn't something people can poke around without consequences. You're not dangerous because you threaten anyone. You're dangerous because crossing your boundaries activates something they can't reason with, something you don't summon, something that simply reacts on its own. That's when one of them brought up the line the psychic muttered on his way out. He's protected by something ancient. They repeated it quietly, almost as if saying it too loudly would attract the attention of whatever he was referring to. They tried to interpret it in human terms, as if protection meant you had someone watching over you, or you carried some spiritual token, or you followed some ritual. But they were wrong. The protection around you doesn't behave like something borrowed. It behaves like something that recognizes you, something that responds to you. It doesn't guard you, it aligns with you. They didn't understand the difference, but they felt it. They tried to discuss what kind of protection it might be, talking over each other, coming up with theories that didn't match the situation at all. Some said ancestral, some said spiritual, some said dimensional, some said universal. But none of those terms fit you. You are not a person who exists inside labels. You're a person who makes labels collapse. You walked away from the group, not because you were done, but because their energy was becoming too frantic. Their panic started pulling on the room. Their fear started amplifying the atmosphere. Fear always does that. It twists the air into something tight. But your presence adjusts differently. You stepped into a quieter space, not to hide, but to let them settle. They followed you with their eyes, not daring to interrupt you this time, not daring to accuse you, not daring to ask for explanations you weren't going to give. They thought they were evaluating your energy. They didn't realize your energy was evaluating theirs. Because while they were focused on what the psychic saw, you were focused on what the psychic didn't see. The part he couldn't reach. The part he backed away from before his own mind fractured around it. He saw the edge. He didn't see the core. He saw the guardian. He didn't see the source. That's why he refused to continue. That's why he said they weren't prepared for what you become next. Because what you become isn't something he can predict. It's something you've already begun shifting into. While they spiraled, you stayed calm. Not because you weren't affected, but because you've lived your whole life with instincts other people don't have. You've always felt something behind you, beside you, within you, a presence that watches, warns, guides, intervenes only when needed. It never interferes without reason. It never speaks without purpose. But it steps forward the moment someone tries to cross into spaces they don't belong. The psychic didn't get permission, so he was shown the door. And the people around you were left trying to make sense of a reality their minds were never trained to process. They kept replaying his expression, his tremor, his refusal to continue. They kept trying to rationalize something that can't be rationalized, because the truth is simple. Your energy doesn't behave like human energy. It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't destabilize. It doesn't fracture. It holds. And anything that tries to infiltrate it gets confronted by the presence that walks with you. You leaned against the wall, looking at the floor, breathing normally, unshaken. But inside you, something opened, not aggressively, not destructively, but expansively. Like a door you didn't even know was locked, like a memory waking up, like a part of you recognizing itself again after years of staying dormant. You didn't summon it, you didn't reach for it. It emerged the moment the psychic tried to pry too deeply. He triggered something he didn't understand. You activated something you didn't expect. They kept watching you, waiting for you to say something that would make them feel safe again. But you weren't there to soothe them. You weren't there to shrink yourself so they could feel comfortable. You weren't there to explain what was never their business in the first place. The psychic's warning repeated itself in their heads on a loop. You're not prepared for what he becomes next. And the more they thought about it, the more they realized he wasn't talking about your future. He was talking about your present. Because what you become next isn't something you grow into. It's something you uncover, something that's been there the entire time, waiting for the moment people misread your calm for weakness, waiting for someone to push too far, waiting for someone to touch the boundary that wakes the part of you you've always tried to keep quiet. You looked up, finally meeting their eyes, and the room froze without you saying a single word, because now they weren't looking at the version of you they were used to. They were looking at the version the psychic warned them about, the version that doesn't hide, the version that remembers, the version that's stepping into the next stage of itself, whether they're ready or not. And as they watched you, unsure if they should stay or run, unsure if they should ask more questions or say nothing at all, unsure if they were standing before something human or something expanded, they realized one more thing. The psychic didn't walk away from you because he was afraid. He walked away because he understood something they didn't. Whatever protects you has now fully awakened. Those words didn't echo in the room. They rooted themselves in everyone's spine. They looked at you the way people look at something they don't have a category for, something that doesn't behave according to familiar rules, something that forces the mind to stretch wider than it's used to. Their breathing slowed, their voices dropped, their posture changed, not because you threatened them, but because something around you shifted into a posture of authority so natural it didn't need to prove anything. You didn't glow, you didn't shake, you didn't posture. You simply existed, and existence alone was enough to reroute the entire atmosphere. The air felt thicker, like sound traveled differently around you now. Their instincts screamed for caution. Some wanted to apologize, even though you didn't ask for it. Some wanted to run, even though you never moved toward them. Some wanted to kneel, even though you never demanded obedience. They didn't understand that the presence they felt wasn't about dominance. It was about recognition. They weren't in the presence of something violent. They were in the presence of something aligned with truth so strongly that deception melted on contact. You took one step forward, not aggressively, just naturally, and the entire group inhaled sharply, like that single movement rearranged the room. But what they didn't notice was how controlled you were. You weren't overwhelmed. You weren't confused. You weren't struggling to contain anything. You were calm, centered, aware. The awakening around you wasn't chaotic. It was precise, almost surgical. It didn't rise up like a wave. It unfolded like something that has waited centuries for the right moment to stretch its limbs. They finally spoke, voices trembling, trying to understand. Is it dangerous? You looked at them the same way the psychic looked at you, with a softness that wasn't human fear, but human understanding. Only when someone tries to cross into places they don't belong. The room tightened again, because now everything clicked for them. It wasn't that the psychic saw something harmful inside you. He saw something protective around you. And that's a level of power people aren't conditioned to accept. They can understand strength. They can understand intuition. But protection that responds before you even react. Protection that watches before you even notice something is wrong. That is something else entirely. They asked, did it awaken because of him? You shook your head. It awakened because he forced an entry. That sentence hit them hard. They realized the psychic wasn't just reading your energy. He tried to push beyond your conscious layers. He tried to dig into places even you don't touch without intention. And whatever guards those places stepped forward without hesitation. It didn't ask your permission. It didn't wait for you to process anything. It reacted the moment your boundaries were breached. That's when the group finally grasped why the psychic panicked. He didn't misread you. He trespassed somewhere he shouldn't have, and something responded that he wasn't prepared to face. They remembered the look in his eyes when he backed away from you. It wasn't terror, it was recognition. A recognition so ancient it doesn't require explanation. A recognition that whatever stands behind you doesn't entertain curiosity. It respects purpose, not intrusion. You could feel their confusion shifting into comprehension, their fear shifting into something more complicated. Awe, respect, unease, curiosity. They weren't looking at you like you were dangerous anymore. They were looking at you like you were something the world rarely produces. Someone who walks with protection that predates human arrogance. Someone who carries a force that doesn't just shield them, but scans the intentions of anyone who steps close. You finally spoke again, your voice steady. He wasn't wrong to try, but he was wrong to push. They listened closely, hanging on every word, because they could feel the weight behind your voice change. You weren't speaking hypothetically. You weren't romanticizing anything. You were speaking from direct experience, the kind people don't talk about, because they don't want to be misunderstood. The kind you've lived with your whole life, but never shared because no one was ever ready to hear it. Your energy didn't awaken something external. It awakened a memory, a recognition. You've always felt a presence around you, guiding you in ways that didn't match coincidence. The right person leaving your life without explanation. The wrong person exposing themselves before they could cause damage. The sudden urges to move react, stop, or retreat before something harmful unfolded. The times you avoided danger without logic. The moments your instincts screamed like they were reading something invisible in the air. That wasn't intuition, that was protection. And now that it's fully awakened, it's no longer subtle. You feel it like a pressure behind you, a warmth on your shoulder, an unseen force standing in a posture that says, I decide who approaches and who doesn't. It's not aggressive, it's not violent. It's simply aware, always aware. They kept questioning, trying to piece it all together. So what happens now? You answered without overthinking it. Nothing changes for me. Everything changes for anyone who tries to cross a line. They exhaled slowly, because they knew you weren't exaggerating. They had already seen a glimpse of what that meant. The psychic, who had experience dealing with energies most people never encounter, walked out unable to speak, unable to look you in the eyes, unable to continue. He wasn't damaged, he was humbled. And not many people have the strength to admit they met something beyond their understanding. The group didn't dare try to read your body language now. They didn't dare project assumptions onto you. Instead, they began re-evaluating everything they ever misunderstood about you. The times they called you strange, the times they underestimated you, the times they joked about your awareness, the times they dismissed your instincts as paranoia. Now they realized those instincts weren't accidents. They were signals, warnings, orchestration. Your energy wasn't unpredictable. It was precise. You stepped deeper into the room, and their eyes followed every single movement, not invasively, but with the kind of attention people give to things they don't want to offend. They didn't speak over you this time. They didn't question your responses. They didn't interrupt. They simply listened. And in their silence, you could feel their understanding solidify. You aren't someone with power. You're someone whose energy is connected to something that predates fear. The psychic's words replayed. No human should have this power. But now, after everything, even they understood the truth. You don't have this power. You are this power. It isn't something you carry like an accessory, something you activate like a weapon, something you summon like a ritual. It's embedded in your design. It's in your bones, your intuition, your timing, your awareness, your edge. It's the quietness you hold before reacting. It's the sharpness behind your eyes. It's the internal compass that never failed you, even when you doubted yourself. He said no human should have this power, not because it was dangerous, but because it didn't fit the category of what humans call normal. And he was right. Nothing about you has ever been normal. You've always felt out of place in the parts of the world that encourage smallness. You've always felt like something was guiding your steps, pulling you away from certain people, pulling you towards certain events, shaping your path, even when you didn't understand the timing. And now the people watching you finally see it too. They're seeing you not through their assumptions, but through the truth the psychic accidentally exposed. They're seeing the version of you that doesn't bow to fear, the version that doesn't shrink when observed, the version that doesn't bend when challenged, the version that stands in the doorway between what humans understand and what they never will. You walked towards the window, looking outside without really focusing on anything specific. You weren't running from the moment, nor were you trying to dramatize it. You just needed a clearer view, not of the outside, but of the shift within you. You felt more grounded than you have in years, not lighter, heavier, but in the way mountains are heavy, in the way oceans are heavy, in the way truth is heavy. And behind you, that awakened presence stood quietly, Not looming, not imposing, just there. Waiting, watching, calculated. Ancient in its awareness, but synchronizing with your present. You didn't need to communicate with it. It already understood you. It always has. One of them whispered, barely audible, "So, what happens to people who try to hurt you now?" You didn't turn around. You didn't smile. You didn't shift your tone. You just said, "Nothing I do," but something else steps in before they get the chance. They swallowed hard, because they knew that wasn't a threat. That was a promise built into your existence. You didn't seek protection. You were chosen for it. And that truth, once revealed, can't be undone. The room grew still again, not out of fear, but out of acceptance. They weren't looking at the mystery anymore. They were looking at the revelation. The psychic didn't fail to read you. He reached for something that was never meant for him. And when it responded, he understood what they are only now beginning to grasp. You aren't defined by the ordinary rules of energy. You move with something that predates interpretation, something that doesn't wait for permission, something that recognizes threats before they form, something that has now taken its rightful position beside you. You took one more breath, slow and steady, and the group realized the truth that will follow you for the rest of your life. They needed proof you were dangerous. The psychic gave them something far more powerful. He gave them understanding that you are protected by something ancient, something alert, something awakened. And anyone who tries to harm you will learn one lesson before anything else. You are not alone, and you never were.